Welcome to this session of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. The GTPI was created to unite the tourism sector behind a common vision to tackle the root causes of the plastic pollution, to support the tourism sector building a circular economy of plastics. The GTPI operates as a sectoral interface of the new plastic economic global commitment from the Alfred Arthur Foundation. As the initiative was launched in January 2020, we are celebrating today the first anniversary of GTPI. COVID-19 caused many impacts, and especially on the sustainable use of plastic. But despite of it, we witness a good level of awareness and commitment to take action. I'm therefore especially happy to announce that with a new group of signatories we are welcoming today, the number of committed signatories raises to 60 organizations. These include accommodation providers, large and small, suppliers, waste management platforms, online platforms, and tour operators. The diversity of those signatories demonstrates the initiative's ambition to work across tourism value chains and shows its catalytic potential. I'm happy that we are joined here today by Megan, Carl, Jeffrey, and Thomas, who all have very, very compelling stories to share. Moderated by my good colleague Virginia, I'm sure you will enjoy an enlightening and practical session. Happy birthday, GTPI.
Thank you so much, Dirk, for your introduction, and thanks to all the participants for their interest in the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. It's really a pleasure to have you here today with us. The objective of our panel discussion in 30 minutes is to walk the audience through the different commitments that the initiative is asking tourism organizations to make in order to become signatories. Our speakers, our signatories, thank you also for your availability, will be sharing strategies and actions that they are implementing to address plastic waste and pollution. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of the coordination team of the initiative. My colleagues Svitlana Mikhailieva and Pablo Montes from UNEP, as well as Gerald Naber from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, are also connected to this session, and they will be able to answer your questions, general questions that you may have about the initiative through the chat function. We are also encouraging you to address questions to the speakers if you have them. However, due to time constraints, we will only be able to address those after the session. But please do post them if you have them. And without further ado, I'll go for the first question, which is related to the first commitment we ask our signatories to make, which is the elimination of unnecessary and problematic plastics by 2025. I'll address this one to Carl. Carl Hunter is a property manager at Anse Castanet and Jade Mountain Resorts in St. Lucia. Carl, we could say that the elimination of unnecessary and problematic plastics is the first step in the journey towards building a circular economy of plastics in which plastics never become waste. We also know that eliminating plastics contributes to minimizing touch points and therefore can prevent COVID-19 contagion. Could you share with us how you have redesigned some of the experiences at your resorts eliminating problematic and unnecessary plastics, and what recommendations would you have for the audience to identify when a plastic is problematic? Please.
Okay, that's a lot of questions. So really the whole elimination of unnecessary plastic, specifically single-use plastics, was our initial and really only objective. We really enrolled our team members in the process. I think it's essential for you to tap into the knowledge within your teams and stimulate the conversation. The best ideas will generally come from your teams. As it relates to the touch points, tied into COVID. COVID initially posed a problem, and a lot of people were thinking that it would engender the use of additional plastics, protective layers, etc. The whole perception of a barrier between you and a problem. And we looked at that internally as well, and it was much a part of our new operational requirements that all shared items between guests, so all in-room collateral, all of the things that are touched and shared and celebrate had to be removed. So we've taken the step of replacing all of our paper collateral with a tablet, and now all of the reservations, everything that would have been a heavy paper plastic process has really been zeroed down to nothing. It's been so successful. We've had such great feedback from guests as well that this is something that will stay with us. It's a permanent change. We're very happy with it. You mentioned elimination being our primary focus. We're an island nation. We have very few resources as it relates to being able to do anything apart from landfill our waste. There's no segregation. There is no recycling happening in St. Lucia. So we're very focused on stopping plastics entering the island from source. If we can achieve that, then really all of the subsets of objectives take care of themselves. So that's been our primary focus. We've been tremendously successful with food and beverage containers, with changing out amenity containers for bulk refillable containers, not deviating away from a high-end product, not compromising the guests' desires for their experience. And all of that's worked tremendously well. Our biggest challenge remains finding a beverage container for hot liquids. Typically what we're using is the polylactic acid, the PLA bioplastic, and we've discovered that that requires to be dealt with as a waste product. It requires an industrial composting, and we don't have the heat levels within the normal composting in backyard composting. So PLA was a mistake for us. It's something that we're trying to look for an alternative. I would welcome any of the panelists to give me suggestions, or anybody else as well. And then lastly, we are also thinking on island very much, are we going in the right direction by really focusing on plastics and replacing plastics with paper? Given that we only landfill in St. Lucia, and that the degradation of paper within a landfill produces methane, and our overarching objective is greenhouse gas reductions, we really want to look at the life cycle of the materials that we have adopted and make sure that we don't have unintended greater consequences of having taken that pathway. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl, for those insights and reminding us how important it is to be mindful of the context. Where are we operating? What are the possibilities there when we are choosing replacement for our plastics, so that the alternatives, we are avoiding unintended consequences with the choices of alternatives that we make. You were mentioning life cycle. In fact, the colleagues from UNEP Life Cycle Initiative have recently published a report analyzing various life cycle assessments for different single-use plastic products, like cups, bottles, takeaway, etc. And we at the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative are now analyzing that report and bringing it closer to tourism perspective. We expect to be able to share guidance very soon for our signatories to be able to take informed action and to be able to understand the trade-offs in terms of environmental impacts between, as Carl was saying, for instance, a plastic cup and a paper cup, or a PET bottle and a glass bottle, so on and so forth. So looking forward to sharing that with you all very soon. It connects very well also with the second question, which is about the second commitment that we request from signatories, which is to integrate reuse models in their operations. This one goes to Jeff. Jeffrey Smith is Vice President Sustainability at Six Senses Hotel, Resorts and Spas. Jeff, despite the complexities of a systemic approach that Carl was mentioning, in general, it would be correct to say that reusable products are environmentally preferable. At Six Senses, you have been integrating reuse models since 1995 with the shampoo and soap dispensers, and you also have successfully integrated the refillable glass water bottles. Would you say that the pandemic has somehow pushed people away from reuse models? Have you encountered challenges? Have you needed to reassure the guests that these dispensers and bottles were fulfilling all necessary hygiene protocols? And also, since you were pioneering in 1995, can you tell us if you're now looking at innovating in other fronts, please?
Sure, of course. So I guess a quick note on COVID and the pandemic is that it's important to keep in mind that any measures put in place are actually increasing safety. And I'm sure we've all noticed there was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, a lot of single-use plastic out there that might not have actually been generating more safety. So a quick plug for the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative. There's a great resource on the website about this exactly, with some good tips on COVID and COVID response that doesn't involve single-use plastic. There's been a lot of discussion and a lot of energy out there around circularity and the circular economy. And I think that's really exciting, because what it really is about is a fundamental shift in thinking and a shift in doing business away from the classic extraction, manufacturing, use, and then waste model, which is a linear model, and shifting to circularity. Yes, we've been using and refilling and reusing ceramic dispensers for our shampoos and conditioners going all the way back to the 1990s. And we've never had those single-use plastic shampoo bottles, for example. Since 2003, we've been refilling and reusing filling our own water bottles and cleaning, sterilizing, reusing glass water bottles at the hotel. So we definitely try to reuse as much as we can inside our hotel operations. And to answer your question, Virginia, taking it forward and where do we go next and innovating on this, we're really trying to take that outside the hotels and get involved with our local supply chains and actually more involved in the circular economy on a larger scale outside of our own operations. So that means building those relationships with our suppliers, talking about take-back programs. What's interesting there is there's so many benefits to supporting local suppliers. It's the local economics, local jobs, building strong communities. If you think about it, one of the reasons why people travel is to experience authentic local culture, and that needs strong communities. So there's so many benefits in supporting local, shorter supply chains. What we also find is by shrinking those supply chains, we're able to do much more with reuse models and take-back programs. When it's a global supply chain, when something's produced on a different continent and flown through a distribution hub and then makes it to the hotel, it's quite difficult to return that container. But when we're working with the farmer down the road, it's possible to actually have a take-back program where we can reuse the packaging. One great example, or one of the first examples where we were doing this in our hotels, is with local fishermen. They used to bring in the fresh seafood in single-use styrofoam boxes, and now we're able to give them reusable coolers that they can bring in and then take back empty, and then we use them again and again. So it's shifting to these circular models where I think there's a lot of promise for reducing plastics.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing your experiences. We are glad to hear that the recommendations on plastics and COVID were found useful. We really felt that when the pandemic started, guidance was needed to prevent a return of single-use plastics, which we felt was unjustified. As you said, the single-use plastics are not sanitization measures in themselves. They require to be sanitized, and therefore with reuse models, we may be in a better position to actually control how that sanitization is taking place in our premises. For the audience, my colleagues will be posting the link to the recommendations in the chat, so you can all take a look. They are available in English, French, Spanish, Arabic, and Russian and Chinese. So please read them and let us know if you find them useful as well. We're always happy to hear feedback. We also find it insightful that you're already starting to think beyond the usual plastics aspects Jeff, I remember our discussions when you mentioned that Six Senses is also having some new properties under construction, and how challenging you thought it was to really increase post-consumer recycled content in products which are exactly that, outside of the usual plastic suspects, like, for instance, the TVs and the air conditioning units and so on. So we look forward to continue learning together on that journey. And that brings me to our third speaker, Megan, on the third commitment that we ask our signatories to make, which is basically related to the engagement of suppliers and waste managers to increase both post-consumer recycled plastic content and recycling rates. So Megan, she's the Global Sustainability Office Director at Iberostar Group. Could you tell us, Megan, how do you engage with suppliers, and how these discussions about increasing post-consumer recycled plastic content look like? And also, I guess in line with your recently announced goal to be zero waste to landfill by 2025, how are you discussing this with waste managers, and how are you engaging at destination level in general to be able to achieve that ambitious goal, please?
No, absolutely. And thank you, Virginia. And it's really a great pleasure to be hearing all of the other solutions that everyone is bringing to the table. I think in order to answer that question, I'm going to pull on a couple things that Carl and Jeff said. First, when Carl mentioned it's really about your team, right? And empowering your employees to be able to make these decisions. And as Jeffrey was saying, it goes beyond just the commitment to the plastics. I think this is really kind of at the core and essence of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. These commitments are meant to give you a first stepping stone that then bring you and your teams into a doorway that is much beyond, we hope as well, in than just the first couple of commitments. And this is very much what happened with our team at Iberostar. It was our purchasing team that were already asking the questions. Okay, they needed to be the point of transformation in order to bring any of these solutions into the hotels. We're now single-use plastics free across our operations. But in order to do that, they were saying, well, what about the recycled content? How can we be bringing in these plastics that are reusable as post-consumer recycled plastic? How can we be thinking about this in other parts of our supply chain as well? And they quickly became the experts asking more questions than the sustainability office had to answer. And we quickly expanded to include, now we're looking for circular economy strategy directors to help us in this journey to look at that life cycle analysis, which is a really important component. But I think what was really important is that it's our purchasing team that has the vision and the contact with providers every day, that knows their reality, from the local small providers to the big international providers that do provide a lot of solutions that are challenging to find on a local level. And for them to be able to see that and integrate that in every sort of interaction was really critical for us. And it was from seeing the amount of success that they were able to achieve in our journey to remove single-use plastics that we said, okay, well, plastics is just one issue. If we're choosing all of these alternatives that also have negative consequences, how do we actually try and figure out a way to make waste not exist as a concept in our operation? So how can we actually work towards a goal of sending no products to landfill at the end of their use? How can they retain value at the end of their use? And quickly setting this goal, we realized that it actually was an excuse to help improve our processes, something that's really useful in a return to business, using this reset to say, how can we actually be doing this more efficiently? Whereas the cost saving mechanisms in saying, if we're sending no waste to landfill, it's not just finding better recycling options, it's about source diversion in the first place. How do we avoid bringing in redundant excess products? And this is really what we did, and created an entire department around this. We're calling it our 3 R's department, right? That helps us to actually manage the waste, weigh and segregate this, and give feedback to departments as a result of that. And what we quickly realized in that journey is that there's only so much that can be done in the facility. If we separate our organic waste perfectly, if we separate our other waste streams perfectly, but there is, as Jeffrey is also saying, in many locations, no options for recycling, we need to engage outside of our facilities. And this is where we're incredibly grateful for partners like UNEP and those groups and UNWTO that are working at a destination level to provide a lot of these solutions. But I think what is really important is that as we're integrating all of these goals together, we find that there are multiple benefits, not only for CSR goals, like having no waste sent to landfill, but also climate change goals, because each of those products has a carbon footprint associated with it. And then also human health goals. A lot of these places that just have landfills have practices that can aerosolize a lot of the harmful chemicals that are coming from tourism businesses and bring a lot of unnecessary chemicals into these destinations. And if there's not good management, it's not good for human health. And we know that human health is an underlying factor that can play a really big role in pandemics. And so I think this helps us to integrate all of these pieces all together.
Thank you so much, Megan, for reiterating the importance to strengthen our actions with the destinations in which we operate. In fact, we believe that creating that virtuous circle between businesses and destinations is definitely essential if we want to achieve circularity of our operations. I also find it a very interesting point to retain the connection between taking action to address plastic pollution and climate action, as at the end of the day, by reducing the demand of virgin plastics, we're also reducing our carbon footprint, and at the same time preserving ecosystems which actually have great carbon sequestration potential, such as, for instance, coastal ecosystems where most Iberostar properties are located. So thank you for bringing those points to the discussion, Megan. We are now moving on to the fourth speaker. Fourth commitment that we ask our signatories to make is to communicate progress transparently to all stakeholders, including travelers. For this, we have with us Thomas Laughlin. He's sustainable supply lead at booking.com. This one goes for you, Thomas. I mean, we all see a growing consensus among tourism stakeholders on the need to take action on major environmental challenges like pollution, biodiversity loss, and climate change. We all want to build back a more competitive, sustainable, and resilient tourism sector from COVID-19. We have read recent perception surveys that are pointing at an increasing demand for sustainable tourism. Given your position, Thomas, at the intersection between businesses and consumers, could you tell us if you're also identifying, let's say, growing interest from your listed properties in sustainability topics, and in particular in the area of plastics, and whether you are making information available to the consumers on those actions that your properties are undertaking, please? You are muted, Thomas. No, we still cannot hear you, but the mic is no longer crossed. Maybe something from your set. Does it have a self-mute? Let's give Thomas a minute, see if he can unmute. Otherwise, maybe Michelle, the technical support, can give us a hand.
Yes, I've already reached out to him to unmute and mute himself again.
Okay, unfortunately, I guess we lost Thomas. Oh, he's back. That's great.
I don't know if that helps.
Well, it works perfectly fine. So yeah, we can. Thank you, Thomas. The floor is yours.
Good. Sorry. So yeah, I was saying that yeah, we do see the same increase in demand. We do see the same interest In fact, from our research, we see that 53% of travelers say that they're more interested in traveling more sustainably, because COVID has amped their awareness on their impact on the environment. And also 70% of consumers say that they're more likely to choose a sustainable accommodation if they know that they're implementing sustainable practices. In the end, our overall goal is to make it easier for everyone to find and book sustainable accommodations. However, from our research, we also know that barriers to sustainable travel still remain. They include a lack of understanding on how to make sustainable choices, a lack of transparency on which properties are actually sustainable, and a higher cost perception. Because of these frictions, in an effort to remove them, we've enabled partners to communicate their sustainability practices on the hotel's page, so on the front end for the guest to see. To date, hundreds of thousands of partners have checked off their sustainability efforts in our extranet, so that's quite huge. We're quite proud of that. So then we use this information to display to the guest in the booking process. We currently display certifications, chain sustainability programs, and partners' efforts across 32 different sustainability actions in 5 key categories. So energy, greenhouse gases, waste, water, biodiversity, ecosystems, destination, and community. And under the waste section, we display information as it relates to single-use plastics. And so this is where we felt the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative tied in really well for us. It was about connecting great information with our partners so that we can make the right decisions, support in the right way. Because giving the partner the how is the key to our success. In an aim to simplify the journey for our partners, we provided them with a sustainability handbook. In the waste section of this handbook, we included information on elimination of problematic plastics, and we aligned this information to that of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative again. We also translate this handbook into 30 languages, and it's available to our partners in the Partner Hub. And finally, I just want to mention that we also provided our partners with the recommendations on COVID recovery and plastics pollution. And we're working on an infographic from this document so that we can share it with our partners so they can communicate with their staff and their guests on why there's certain plastics that have been removed. So helping communicate this initiative to the guest and the consumer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We appreciate very much your commitment to share knowledge on the issue of plastics with your properties, and it definitely can create a lot of multiplier effects. I have to say, as many of us, I also very much look forward to making booking my next vacation so that I can benefit from all the sustainability information that you are collecting and making available to make the best choice. We are now at the point of concluding the panel. We have covered the main commitments that our Global Tourism Plastics Initiative is making, is asking or requesting from organizations to make in order to become signatories. So just as a recap, we covered the elimination of unnecessary and problematic plastics, the integration of reuse models and reusable alternatives, taking action to engage with suppliers and with waste managers to enhance post-consumer recycled plastic content and also recycling rates at the destination level, and of course communicating progress to all stakeholders, including travelers. So I hope that you found this session informative and useful, and definitely look forward to welcoming you all as signatories to the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. The challenge on plastic pollution is too big for any of us to address on our own, so better join forces. We have actually done so well with time. We have 2 extra minutes, so I'll take advantage of these 2 extra minutes to ask one very brief question to our speakers. If you had to tell our colleagues who are connected today why they should join us, why should they join the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, what would be the reason? Can I prompt you, Megan, to go first?
Yeah, I think if you are already bought into being convinced on why sustainability is important, we hope that's the case since you're here at this talk, then if anything else, a community. There's a community there of others that are working on the same sorts of topics, as you can see from this panel.
Thank you. Carl, any thoughts from your side?
I think adding to what Megan said is don't underestimate the influence that we have on everybody else that's connected to hospitality, especially on an island. Our initiatives are influencers for other people to seek the same change.
Thank you, Carl. Jeff?
I think many tourism destinations are seeing the negative impacts of plastic pollution, so it's up to all of us to act. And this is a great forum to do that and to do it collectively, as my colleagues have already mentioned.
Thank you. Tomas, your turn.
Yeah. And yeah, I would just say the same as Megan. I think that it's good to have a community around you to understand, because some parts can be a little bit complicated, and it's good to have a good support network. And also leveraging, you know, COVID brought many bad things, but it also brought an interest in the topic. So it'd be good to use that momentum to kind of take the first steps.
Thank you so much. So we remain at your disposal for any questions on the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. I thank you, and over to you, Dirk, if you'd like to close.
Virginia, thank you very much, and I thank the fellow speakers, Megan, Carl, Jeffrey, and Thomas. This was, as promised at the beginning, very practical, hands-on, and that's what we need to do. Thank you very much. Happy birthday to all of you.